You'll have to excuse me. Earlier today, I swallowed wrong, and now apparently I'm going to cough forever. So that's what we got going on. Let's do this, Armand. I agree. All right. We're looking at Ruthless, Rabid, Raging, Ravenous, Rampaging, Remorseless, Repulsive, Revolting, Repugnant Zombies by J. Wilburn. We left off at the end of a chapter, so we should be able to get down there pretty fast. We're going to begin chapter 12. I'm going to drop back to the top of the page and kind of talk us or read us into the section, and then we can keep going. I filled out my outline a little bit more, so I'm well ahead of where we should get to today. My goal is 25,000 words, so I should be halfway done today, the 10th, and if I keep that pace up, I'll be done on the 20th, which is my ultimate goal there. So let's jump back into the story. Hold on a second. I can tell I'm going to have a rough day. In addition to everything else, I'm having a bit of a cloudy day too, so mentally I'm not as together as I normally am, although this is kind of becoming the new normal, so that's all right. Bodies from several windows pitched out and down. I keep saying pitched. I want to come up with a different word. Bodies from several windows. No, I keep using hurtled too. Tumbled, I've used a lot. I'm going to stick with pitched for now. I go back and edit. One of the main things I'm going to be doing is switching out words. Okay. Waldo got to his feet and jogged toward the fence as bodies hit the ground hard and wet. Body parts spun through... Okay, don't know what I was doing there. Through the air. Past him on both sides. Doors burst open with a series of crashes along the ground floor. He turned to see a scattering of undead strolling out to meet him in this back lot. If you a-holes could have done that all along, why were there so many of you left in the building? Waldo glanced left and right. The parking lots... were empty of cars and not, let's say, completely packed with zombies. There's nothing wrong with the sentence the way it was before, but I thought it read kind of odd, so I wanted to be clearer, make it flow better. But the ones spread out in both directions were all coming toward him in this expansive back lot. All right. In this, let's say, just say paved. I don't want to say expansive because I may have to use that later. He considered running through them to escape, but could see at least one gate in each direction that was chained and locked closed. There was space under them, under the gates, but not much, probably less than what he had when he tried to crawl under all those cars. The stone edges of the opening Waldo had fallen from broke, let's say the second floor opening. The second floor opening Waldo had fallen from broke and expanded wider. Bodies from that hallway poured out in a rush. A few got crushed, but then others, let me fix that spelling error, then others crawled toward him. Then, okay, no, I don't want to keep saying then. Let's just say the cracks expanded across the wall in all directions. The brick folded away under the window. Through that new passage, a few zombies inside turned to look. Okay. Brick folded away under the window. Let's see. All the way down to the foundation. Through that new passage, a few zombies. All right. Finally, you're back. I waited for you. Sorry for the caps. Oh, no problem. Thanks for being here, man. Hope everything's good out on the part of the world you're in. Through the new passage, a few zombies inside turned to look at Waldo, staring back at them. They paused, but then exited the building through the broken wall toward him. More chunks of brick as big as doors fell from above and obliterated a few of these new these new, let's say, arrivals. I don't want to keep saying the same word over again. These new arrivals. Not enough, but a few less to deal with for what that was worth. The walls started to sound like cracking ice. Let's say thawing. It started to sound like thawing light ice over a deep and deadly lake. That'll paint a better picture, I think. Waldo peered upward as the entire back of the structure lost its shape. Oh, hell no, he whispered. The wall folded toward him as it fell out in enormous pieces, large enough to block out the sun. Waldo turned and ran hard toward the back barrier of the high chain-link fence for all he was worth. He ran for it, but thought he was already dead. Okay, listening to Swedish audiobook. How Swedish cope with a virus outbreak who turned all infected into rage-infested creatures. Very good. That sounds interesting. All right, so let's dive back in here. The let's say the falling islands of brick and cinder block exploded on the ground right behind him. The entire world vibrated with the impacts to the point that he couldn't even feel his feet below his ankles. He thought he was still running, but he wasn't sure. Okay. But he wasn't sure, let's say, of anything anymore. Those explosive hits kept coming. He expected each one to crush him out of existence. He almost welcomed the idea of relief from all this running and danger. But he had gone on surviving for so long, especially in this day that seemed to never want to end. So he charged away from the brick asteroids, trying to destroy him. Alright, that's some good stuff there. Okay, and today I took a day free from work to get to Kalmar on the East Coast to get my hands on 8 books about American Civil War. I love history, so I couldn't stop myself. American Civil War is interesting. There's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of underlying social issues that are still with us today in one form or another. For a lot of history buffs in the United States, the Civil War is like the most interesting part of history for them. And then, of course, there's stuff people still argue over. It's cool that you got those books. It's interesting, how far you have to travel to find what you're looking for, though. we don't have as many bookstores, brick and mortar bookstores in the United States as we used to. So many people buy stuff from Amazon that you really kind of have to look to find where the stores are, especially in some parts of the country. All right. I do a lot of nonfiction reading too. I love fiction of all types, and I'm constantly reading something. But a lot of times, and sometimes it's just an act of like trying to find out things I can use for stories and stuff. I end up reading a lot of nonfiction, both in long and short form. So it's probably something more writers should consider as they're working their craft. Okay. The bits of stone off those falling sections. No, I'll spell sections correctly. Off those falling sections of wall, spun through the air. I keep saying through the air. Spun by him. Smaller chunks. Let's say smaller pieces. Still big enough to hurt. Struck him on the backs of his legs and head. Okay. He reached the fence. And it shimmered with his weight bouncing off of it. With nowhere left to go, he looked over his shoulder at the fallen ruins still settling across the ground. Alright, have you read Con Logan books? He made historic-based books. I have not. I haven't heard of him that I recall. Is he... what country is he from? With nowhere left to go, he looked over his shoulder at the fallen ruins still settling across the ground. I may copy down that name after stream from the chat. Check him out. Okay. Figures appearing shadowy through the new storm of brick and concrete dust. Oh, thank you for the link. I'll check that out. New storm of brick and concrete dust. Okay. Emerged from the lower floors. Waldo couldn't imagine that they could see him well, if at all. But maybe they could smell him. Or maybe they just kept walking and walking until they found someone like him foolish enough to still be in the city. He could not make out their features yet, but their numbers were strong, and they outnumbered. Oh, the Amazon page too, thank you. But their numbers were strong, and they outnumbered all the ones who had been crushed or buried in this collapse. The ones from both sides of the parking lot, let's say the fenced in and locked parking lot. All the ones from both sides of the fenced in locked parking lot picked their way across the new field of rubble with their typical insistent patience. Let's say Waldo used his hands and feet to work his way up the fence that he now realized was a good 10 to 12 feet tall. The apartments inside had been quite nice. Lots of rooms. Lots of square footage. Even before the floors and walls started collapsing. Maybe these fences were to protect people rich, I'll say well off enough to afford these rents. Halfway up that excessive fencing, Waldo noticed the tight bundles of razor wire spiraling over the top of the fence, let's say of each section. Damn it, he said as he continued to climb. Looked like he was getting bitten, no matter which part of the fence he chose. The zombies' feet scratched the broken rocks around the lot as they drew closer to where he climbed. Let's say near the top, Waldo made his way sideways, doing his best to find footholds in the small loops within the chain link pattern. Okay. Am I doing, let's see, 20? Yeah, okay. Got confused there for a minute, sorry. I'm not as clear today as I normally am. Math is particularly hard when I'm having a cloudy day. Alright. He tried to reach one of the connections between razor wire swirls. He tried to reach one of the connections between razor wire swirls. These were metal rods of sorts. Let's say metal brackets. Metal brackets of sorts that bent up and in partway over their length. Holding the dangerous wire over the side of the fence. Okay, Waldo was sure he was getting cut up bad before this was over. But maybe he could make it over into the grassy field on the other side, still alive. Okay. As he tried to figure out where to get a handhold on that connection while doing the least damage to himself, he spotted the dried meat hanging from several of the razors, several of the razor points going out in each direction. The slivers of flesh were like thin, almost transparent shavings of beef jerky. Someone, say someone, okay, several someones had tried to get out or into this place over this same wire. This didn't look at all promising for Waldo's plan. He hesitated. Alright, let's see what happens when he hesitates. You know, he who hesitates is lost, they say. Alright. The zombies in this fenced area with him reached the fence finally and lined up under him. As they clustered against his section of fence, they stretched up to try to reach his feet and shook the entire fence in the process. He clung to the links even as his, let's make this a new paragraph here because we're talking about him now instead of the zombies. He clung to the links even as his arms started to shake and the muscles quivered from strain. He had held onto narrow places often recently, but he could tell right away that he couldn't hold on to this, to the side of this fence for much longer. Not with all the shaking they were doing below him. All right. The zombies spread out and pressed against the sections of fence on both sides of him, even as they jostled each other for position under him. All right. Next page of notes. All right. Waldo balled up as tight and as high as he could without slicing himself open on the razor wire, bobbing back and forth inches above his head. The countdown to his fall had to be in single digits at this point. All right. To speed things along, some of the connections between sections and along the sheets of chain link themselves snapped with almost musical twangs. The fencing he clung so desperately to lost some of its turgor. How's that for a fancy word? Lost some of its turgor, and he felt his grip coming apart in the process. I've used in the process before. I'm going to need to change that. All right. To make matters worse, no, let's make a new paragraph. And I've already done 2 at the beginning of that other paragraph, so I need to start this one differently. Making matters worse, as if that were possible. The fence, let's say the entire fence, under the pressure of the gathered zombies, I guess the gathered undead, leaned back over their rotten heads. Waldo went from hanging onto a sheer surface to one that was inverting. It wouldn't take much for him to lean right down into their reach. Of course, he expected to fall loose before that. Faster than he could register the shift, the fence righted itself, but then kept leaning forward over the dirt and grass on the other side. Okay. Yeah, okay, we're good. Over the dirt and grass on the other side. That was better. A lot better. His muscles tingled with the relief of pressure. But how far over could the fence bend before they could climb up, or it snapped back to fling him into their arms and teeth? Alright, good stuff. Alright. That needs to be a question mark, and then we go this way. He found out quick. The fence never stopped folding forward. There was an unmusical snap, and then a crash. Loose chain link buckled. Buckled on both sides of the flattened sections that Waldo now knelt on top of. The rest of the fence along the back of this lot wavered. Let's say undulated to where the chain link leaned one way and then the other, depending on where someone might be standing. Let's say with the collapse, the mass of bodies cascaded forward. Yeah, I use Word. A lot of people are switching to Scrivener is one, and then other people are writing on Google Docs these days. But I just use the standard Word. No, I don't use Scrivener. That's the one. There's a lot of evidence that it's better. So I don't have anything against it other than I'm just used to Word, and there's a lot of places I send things besides just publishing where having standard Word docs helps a great deal. And I know you can write in that program and save it in different formats. But maybe part of it is just it's what I know, so it's what I'm sticking with. So I write in Word. I don't necessarily recommend it. They do a lot of updates that can throw things off, and then depending on how many other products you use, it can become a mess. But literally, I just use the Word as as a word processor. Essentially, I'm not doing a lot of spreadsheets or other stuff where other programs actually kind of do it a little better than them, and then don't constantly update and change your format. But I guess it's force of habit. But that is what I write from. With the collapse, the mass of bodies cascaded forward to their faces. Others behind them fell in a domino effect of decaying corpses. From there, they started crawling over the top of each other to get to where Waldo wasn't yet moving again. He collected himself in a hurry, just as the first fingers started to caress his boots. Okay. Say, without much time to think about it, he launched himself forward and hurtled the bundle of razor wire now on the ground. In his rush, he barely cleared it. Slicing one of his pant legs. Is that a compound word? Oh my goodness. Slicing one of his pant legs in the process during the leap. I am not going to write in the process anymore. That has been said too many times in this story, and I'm going to quit doing it. Still wonder how they even could produce books with the typewriter before the computer came. Most have been held to edit, must have been held to edit or deal with misspellings and such. I've thought about that a lot. The fact that, like, my entire career, the whole reason I'm able to write full time is because of modern technology. The ability to send stories by email, the ability to stream, obviously, which is an income source for me now, and about 100 other things, Patreon and all these other things that I guess some people call it democratizing the publishing process, where you do have options. I do go through publishers. Sometimes those experiences are good, sometimes they're bad, but the fact that I can self-publish gives me an opportunity to make a little more money. And then all these other sources as well. And not only having to type them, but you'd have to mail your submissions to people. It was harder to hear about submissions, and there's more cost involved. Now, that being said, people in the past kind of actually made more money from publishing than they do now. Some of it is the diversification of income has kind of undercut the lowest tiers of writing in terms of finances, so that's kind of depressing when you hear about some of the advances writers made in the past. But I do think, to an extent, like editing has gotten worse, and I don't want to call anyone out on this, but there seemed to be a higher level of editing back in those typewriter days, and I know, like you mentioned, it would have been harder work. It would be harder to get it right, because things had to be retyped and then typeset and all these things that were costly. But the older the book is that I find, the fewer typos I find in it. And I've even found in a couple cases where I've been rereading all Stephen King's book, but I don't have like the books from, first editions or anything like that. So a lot of the early books I have are recent reprints. Like, you can tell that they've been reprinted within just the last couple years. And I find more typos in there. And I remember I was reading one story, The Mist, from a copy that I'd had to rebuy, and I had an older copy of just The Mist itself that had come with some promotion or something years ago, and I found a typo in The Mist, which is an old story. It's we're going back to like late 70s, early 80s, and I opened the older version of it, and the typo wasn't there. So in this modern age where we're reprinting things and we have spell check and all this stuff, I found that older books that are being reprinted have typos in them that weren't there in the beginning. Now the likely explanation is that someone had to sit down with the old text and type it in a computer, so you end up with typos there. But somewhere along the way, they missed typos that were added in. And the more and more we go on, I've struggled with typos all along. So with my self-published work and everything else, I've always struggled with typos. It took me a long time to find editors that were doing a good job of finding them. So even though I was paying editors to help edit my self-published stuff, I was still finding a ton of typos in there, and like embarrassing numbers in a couple cases. As years have gone on, I've gotten better help with that, so that my self-published stuff is not as error-ridden as the stuff I'd written in the past. But even working with a couple publishers, I found that there's been problems with the editing, which very much upsets me. You know, you go with a publisher and you split your earnings with them. You kind of want, I kind of want that stuff to be even more pristine than the stuff I'm struggling with on my own. But the case is that just even with all the modern conveniences, even with all the publishing being better, I think editing was stricter in the past and better. It was more error free in the past. I don't know if that's cutting costs or anything of that nature. And maybe it is the difficulty. Maybe the fact that, like, if you mess something up, it wasn't cheap to fix everything. So you needed to be more careful as you went through. And maybe we've gotten more careless as we've gone on. But yeah, all that being said, I still would not want to go back to the typewriter days. I don't believe that I could have a career as a full-time writer without living in this era. I think this era has made that possible for me. And that going back in time, you know, would force me back into a day job where, you know, I couldn't make a living at the level that I'm at as a writer. That's an interesting point, yeah. Talking about how different things are now from how they used to be. All right, so he got over there. I think I may have to make that paragraph a little, give it a little more punch, but I can do that in the edits. All right, leaps over the razor wires after snagging his pants. Zombies continued. Just the cost of all the paper wasted, absolutely. You know, everything had to be hard copy as they went along. And especially if you messed up and had to do reprints. Can you imagine that? That wouldn't have been cheap. Way before the era of print on demand. Zombies continued to crawl forward, pressing their faces through the wires, shaving off entire sections of their faces. Still they persisted. After all those cuts, they tangled themselves up beyond escape. Others squeezed. Hey, Zach. How's it going, man? Good to see you again. I hope you're sloughing off work to come in here. I'd hate to think that you were doing anything productive while I'm sitting here typing my silly little zombie story. But hope things are going well for you, man. Glad to see you. Others squeezed between those trapped creatures and bound themselves up tight as well. No zombie stories are silly. I've written a lot of zombie stories, and some of them are silly, but I appreciate your support, man. Thank you so much. Others squeezed between those trapped creatures and bound themselves up tight as well. Still, they kept on their mindless pressure, winding themselves up in the stretching out loops of sharp wire. Good stuff. All right. I like how this is going. I like the scene. I like the details. Waldo stood at his leisure, thankful for the narrow escape. Okay, at his leisure. Hold on, let me spell this right, and I'll check on what Zach is talking about. All right, Waldo stood at his leisure, thankful for the narrow escape, and and the moment to catch a breath. All right, that's good enough. All right, now he can look around and survey his scene a little bit. Zach, no, we're good. I work third shift for now. I hated working third shift, man. It takes a special kind of creature to work those hours. I guess take that as a compliment. I'm calling you a special kind of creature. I was offered a new job last week, just ironing out the start date. Oh, that's excellent. I hope it's what you want, man. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with old jobs or whatever, but being able to get something new that you're looking forward to. Mondo. My favorite zombie movies are Shaun of the Dead, Brain Dead, and Night of the Living Dead. I like all three of those. I almost like all three of those for different reasons. I mean, obviously they're all zombie movies. Shaun of the Dead especially directly inspired by Night of the Living Dead. It's almost a tribute in and of itself, but they all have like their own special brands of humor and fear and all that kind of stuff. There are a lot of terrible zombie movies out there, I will say that, and I'm a sucker for terrible zombie movies. I'll sit through some of the worst. But when you get a good one, when you get ones that are well shot and the story's good and all that, that's something special, because especially for zombie fans that have been fans of this sub-genre trope for a long time, we had to wade through a lot of bad media to find the treasures out there too. Thank you all for being here. Feel free to comment or question or whatever you want to do as we go along. I like taking the breaks here every once in a while as we wade through all this. Okay. He stretched, feeling every ache, pain, and scratch. Yeah, he had accumulated, that's not right, okay, had accumulated through this impossible day. All right, love the British humor in Shaun of the Dead. I really do, and I like it too. I think it's great. Someone's at my front door. I hope it's my wife. Yeah, I like it a lot. My wife isn't terribly a fan of British humor. She thinks it's a little too dry, but yeah, I love those type of movies and shows. I think in any genre, I think they do a great job. All right, Waldo. Okay, he stepped away from the mess. Okay. I'm going to have to bring something in here in a minute, so I'll take a break in just a moment. I got to get something from the door. He stepped away from the mess of snared undead and took a rare moment to survey the scene and really think about what he needed to do next. Alright, what I need to do next is pick up a delivery outside and make sure that my kids have something to eat. I'm not leaving for good, but I'm going to do a be right back scene on here, and then within a couple minutes at the most, I'll drop back in. If you guys need to head on for whatever reason, that's cool. But I'm coming right back and jumping right back into this once I get my house settled. Thank you so much. Real life hijack Jay Wilburn. I like that. All right, so everything's in order in the house. Everybody has the food they need and everything they need to not need me. Thank you guys for hanging in there with me. All right. Let's say this field stretched out into the distance. It was completely surrounded by other buildings. Was close to gathering a rescue team. You'd have to have it come and find me. I'm way out in the woods too. This field stretched out into the distance. It was completely surrounded by buildings as it cut a course through the center of the city. The backs of the buildings off to the left and up a slope, let's say up a steep slope, were the closest. Waldo was in no hurry to dive back into the urban sections, let's say urban regions, the urban regions of this necropolis. What was that for a fancy word? Okay. More connections. Nope. I don't want to use the word more. I keep using more. Connections twanged behind him as the razor wire popped loose from its holds. Waldo turned to see the mass. Nope, I've already said mass. To see the tangled bodies shuffle. Alright, let's just do 1B in body since that's how everyone else spells it. Alright, turn to see the tangled bodies shuffle a few more feet. Nope, a few feet closer to him in their wire prison. He took a few more, I'm going to leave more there. He took a few more steps away and looked, and let's say peered across the field again. Alright. So we got the zombie threat still there, even though he appears to be getting a breather. It wasn't a park. Not even before it was overgrown like this. What are your opinions of the series of fantasy books, or series of fantasy books, or standalone? Okay. Just in a marketing standpoint, there's arguments to be made for both series and standalones. Fantasy is a little different in that readers are used to sometimes reading longer works. They're used to getting into a series, but the truth is, regardless of genre, there is an argument to be made for the marketability of a series. So if you can hook somebody into a book 1 and there's a book 2, you're going to get more readers. Maybe not every reader of book 1, but if you do a good book 1, you can bring people along in a book 2. Book 2 is easier to sell to somebody who's already looked at book 1, and then you get to 3, 4, and 5, and once you get to a certain point, enough readers have read a second, third, or fourth book, they're more likely to keep reading than they are to quit. Now, that being said, there's still drop-off all the way along. So if you're experiencing drop-off on your series, and you get to books 7 and 8, 7 and 8 are a hard sell to a new reader, because you're always kind of selling them on book 1. And eventually you're shrinking your audience down the further you go, even in a very popular series. The advantage of a standalone is that more people are willing to give it a chance. Not everybody who tries out a new author wants to start out with a series. So even if you do have a series, it serves you to have some standalone books that readers can check out, because if they buy into that reading, they're more likely to then buy into, if they buy into what you write, how you tell stories, they're more willing to give your series a chance. Whereas a series that's already to the 5th, 6th, 7th book is quite a commitment at that point. As a kid, when I was reading a lot more fantasy, I did like the series, so I would pick up the standalone books and I enjoyed those. But any kind of series would kind of drag me in. I really did enjoy them. As I've gotten older, I tend toward more standalone. So I've gotten to the point where I kind of rarely dive into a brand new series unless it's an author that I already know. And I tend to look at people's standalones. And typically, if I'm getting into a series, I've read a couple of their standalones already. So, and again, I'm not a typical reader in the sense that, like, writing is sort of my profession. Well, it's not sort of my profession. It is my profession. I make a living from it. And so even when I read for pleasure, I'm still kind of reading it on a second level, like a meta level, where I'm considering how I write and what I need to do differently and what works for the story and what doesn't and that kind of thing. So I'm probably not a great test case on what's best for, a typical reader who isn't also a writer. But I do think fantasy lends itself more to the series. You're dealing with an audience that that is looking to lose themselves in something for a long period of time. Zach says, I read a lot of fantasy series, but sometimes they are intimidating. Like, I'll probably never start the Wheel of Time. That's a good one, but like many, it's heavy. You know, it's heavy in a similar way that like Lord of the Rings is. I guess that's not a great comparison in terms of like the depth of the language or whatever, I guess you'd say. But in terms of like you're taking on a big world with lots of characters, lots of backstory, and then of course the number of books you got to deal with. But again, the point is you don't need every reader, so you don't have to get every reader in the world. There's some people who don't read series, so they're kind of out, and some of those same people would never pick up your standalone either. Yeah, it is dense. So you're not marketing to those people. So when you look at like the sub audience of fantasy readers who like series, and then among that the people that you can convince to pick up your series, then that's who you're looking for. So you don't, and that's kind of been a theme for me as a full-time writer, kind of making a living from writing. A good portion of that from my own books. I don't need every reader. I don't need every horror fan there is out there. I just need enough to buy it so that I'm paying my bills and can afford to write more books. And again, getting into that is more toward the business side of things, so that kind of takes some of the magic out of the storytelling. But as someone who does make a living from this, then that is a calculation that goes into what I do, and considering what I write. Now, the way I use that is I don't have to try to write to market. I just write what I want to, and then find who's going to read that to an extent. So, but yeah, with fantasy books, you're looking at readers that probably lend themselves more towards a series. There's a lot to a standalone though, because the level of commitment kind of opens up more of an audience, and you can use that to be a jump off point to a series. It wasn't a park. All right, let me add in a modifier there. Ian Fleming's James Bond is a good example of a series who also can work as yes, all right, and that's a whole element that I wasn't even considering. But yes, if your series can work as standalones, then you're in great shape. And that's true of a few different books. I know the author I like named Chuck Buda has the Son of Earp series, and so it's sort of like Supernatural meets the Wild West, and they have an adventure each one, and the characters do progress as the novels go. So I enjoy reading them in order. But any one of those you could pick up on your own, and it would almost be like an episode out of these guys' lives. And so he does a good job with that. I hope more people get a hold of that series because it is a good one. It wasn't a park, not even before it was overgrown like this. The patchy grass and dirt gave way to thicker grasses and weeds by the second or third hill. Beyond that, overgrowth spread in thickets of tall privet. Okay, I think I misspelled privet, but let's see if I can get it. Yeah, it has an E in it. All right, of tall privet and other invasive species thriving on this forgotten land. The zombies in the wires scraped their way forward again. Waldo took a couple more steps to stay out of their reach. Okay. I think we figured out eventually these zombies are getting loose and getting at him. But silly old Waldo, he wants to see what's ahead of him. In the middle distance, high tension power lines traveled in a diagonal over tall metal towers. Beyond them, the field and hills rolled on for miles. Okay. Read a series of books, Volvin's Daughter, and Volvin is a Viking age princess who consisted of 7 books. When I came to the end of the last book, I felt it ended in the air somehow. Oh yeah, it could have continued much longer. That is kind of an issue too. You kind of have to decide, is your series ongoing or do you have a definite ending to it? And sometimes you don't know. Like, you expect to go on, and sometimes it's something as unromantic as sales that decide whether there's going to be a book 8 or 9 or so on, or authors pass on or all that kind of thing. I do like a series that comes to an end, whether it was planned that way or the author simply made a decision that this is the termination point. A lot of times authors do leave it open because they might decide to come back to it one day. But that kind of leaves readers hanging at times. Speaking of zombies, as I'm writing about zombies, one series that I like that did end well and ended purposefully, was Armand Rosamelia's Dying Days series. It's a zombie series. It's most of the books are about novella length, but there's a few that are a bit longer. And he had 9 books in all, so it's a good long series, even though the books aren't dense or terribly long themselves. And he has a specific termination point. I'm trying to be careful not to give anything away because I do love those books, and it'd be a shame to give away book 9 before someone picked up book 1. But he knows what the story's about. He has great characters. They come in and out, and the zombies evolve over the course of the stories, and the main character evolves as well as she's kind of making her way through. And when you get to book 9, it was clear that he knew how he was ending it, and so it turned out well. And it's kind of a rare thing to have a series in that kind of genre that has a clear beginning, middle, end over the 9 books. So he's one that did it right. Going back to the series that Kedman was talking about, that series also ended with almost every good guy dies, but not the evil ones, which could piss me off. Yeah, that is a problem. Now, every story doesn't have to have a good end, a happy ending, but if you're bringing somebody along for 7 books, there really ought to be a victory at the end of it. Something to consider, though. Of course, you can't ever tell anybody else how to write their stories, but you kind of know what the audience expects and what they want out of it and what they've invested in it. So I guess that's everybody's choice. All right. Beyond them, the field and hills rolled on for miles. Waldo did look back now, but not at the trapped zombies. Not at the trapped zombies or the free ones that were pressing into the back of the pile, trying to find their way through. He scanned the open rooms and halls up and down that apartment building, missing its back. a few zombies stood at the edges. Stood at the edges looking out, while a couple stepped out to to splatter on the ground and rubble below. What he didn't see was the girl he had followed inside. Okay. Alright, dystopia can be okay, but if George R.R. Martin had killed Avaria, I would have stopped reading the rest of the series. That's another dense series as well. I read the first. It feels like I read the first one a lifetime ago, and I haven't gotten through all the rest. I think there's one or two I still need to read, and then of course, the question is he ever going to write the last one? But we'll find out, I guess. That's another series that leaves people hanging, I think. What he didn't see was the girl he had followed inside. She had left him behind at one point to fend for himself. But it wasn't like sorry, I was checking something there on my phone. But it wasn't like she hadn't tried. Waldo had given her every excuse to cut and run. He didn't hold it against her. That was easier for him to feel on this side of the wire. She was more capable and seemed to know the building better. He had really ripped the place apart. Fighting his way through zombies inside. The zombies inside. If he had to guess, he thought she might have made it out. But to this back lot, surrounded by fence, he didn't know. It had taken her a while to make it up that hall, surrounded by zombies. So maybe she still was inside. He hoped not. But there wasn't much he could do about it either way. Like she had said, he couldn't, like she had said, he couldn't help himself. Why would she need his help? say before he turned away, the pile shifted, the wires stretched. The pile shifted and the wire stretched, let's say. All right, I see the comment there. I'm just finishing up a thought. All right, Marie-Louise Legend series is okay too, even if it's considered to be dystopia, so that didn't bother me so much as it maybe should do because it was labeled as dystopia. Yeah, I don't know. It probably comes down to a matter of taste. So for every unsatisfying ending that you can come up with in literature, there's probably somebody who appreciates it. So it's kind of one of those ideas that, you know, you're not able to please everyone. I do think some endings are better than others, and depending on the genre. I am a fan of dystopian, though, so things not going well, things not going perfect, leans into a lot of what I'm doing. I actually have to spend more time reminding myself to sometimes have good endings to the stories, not just good as in quality, but, you know, happy endings. Because my tendency a lot of times with horror is to have things end, you know, negatively or poorly or incomplete endings or that kind of thing. But I got to remind myself every once in a while that stories do sometimes need happy endings, even dark stories, dystopian stories. So I kind of keep my mind open to that when I'm writing something. If it lends itself towards a happy ending, maybe be careful that my instincts don't take it to darker places when that's not best for the particular story I'm writing. Especially short stories, you can go a lot of different directions with. Before he turned away, the pile shifted and the wire stretched. Most of the crawling monsters remained trapped. But a few found their way over the shorter stack of flesh. We'll keep it gross there. They sliced themselves open on the razors, but kept coming as they fell over onto the open field side of the fence with Waldo. Time was up. He needed to move, so he did. Waldo broke into a jog, taking care not to turn an ankle on the rough landscape, but he wanted to stay ahead of the scattering of bodies following him without using up all his energy. His plan, still formulating in his mind, was to stay in the field as far as it would take him. He didn't expect it to lead him out of the city, but power lines went on for a while. And maybe he could get away from the heaviest parts of the undead population. And maybe he could get away from the heaviest parts of the undead population before he had to go street to street again. That idea, though a solid one, was not in the cards for him today. Alright, let me check the comment there real quick. Alright, yeah, hard not to have a bad ending with a zombie story. You can go a few ways. Especially with horror and dystopian, you can have like a mixed ending. So, you have the sadness of losing people, which is realistic in a situation like that. But you can still give readers a partial victory, and I think authors are rewarded by not going as dark as they could every single time. All right, inclined over the ones. Okay. As the grass grew thicker, Waldo found himself searching the growth for snakes. He was looking for zombies too, of course, but he would hate to suffer a snake bite in the midst of all this. All right. Thinking about and looking for snakes. He noticed the movement. He noticed the movement in the ground sooner than he might have otherwise. All right. Okay. It is a guilty pleasure to make up ways to kill off your protagonist. Yeah, and you got plenty of characters. You can get creative with all the ones you got to kill off. All right. Waldo pulled up and stood in place with that knee-high grass. Let's say yellow and green. Yellow and green grass. The ground was breathing. Once, during a hurricane, all right, I'm going to make this a new paragraph. The ground was breathing. Once during a hurricane, when he was a kid, Waldo remembered a tree slowly pulling up by its massive roots near, let's say, outside his aunt's house. Outside his aunt's house. The high winds combined with the wet ground were too much for the ancient tree's weight. It had pulsed back and forth, making the ground look like it was breathing. Just as the ground around adult Waldo appeared to be pulsing now. Back then, the tree had fallen away from the house, which was good, as the exposed root system was taller than the roof once the great tree had been on its side. Out here in this dry ground, with no excuse for the ground to be breathing, out here on this dry ground with no excuse for the ground to be breathing, Waldo did not think the threat was going to fall lucky for him this time. All right. The highest point for me with Walking Dead was when they found Sophie as a zombie after searching for her half the season 2. I cried. I think I love the comic books of that series. I think it was an exceptional addition to the genre, and especially early on when there wasn't as much around for it, and it was that ongoing story that kept going and going and going. And I think the early days of the show were really good too. A lot of people didn't like it because it was a slow build back then, which had to do a good bit with the showrunners back at that point. But I found with the Walking Dead in particular that it benefited from binge watching. So going back and watching some of those seasons and some of the character stuff people didn't like from season to season, when you watched all the episodes back to back for a season, I think it played a lot better. Things made more sense. The characters' choices seemed better. The pacing seemed better, all that kind of stuff. So I think it benefited from binge watching over the week-to-week thing where people had too much time to be thinking about what was happening. But again, the longer a story goes on like that, you get to a certain point where you're running into trouble. And one of the problems, of course, with The Walking Dead, and probably with Game of Thrones to a certain extent too, was the idea that it's kind of cool to have this idea that, I think the slow building was essential for your interest. I agree too. I like the story, and I like the character stuff too. I think one of the problems with that idea that anybody could die at any time is eventually you start losing all the characters that have the history of the show. So if you go back and watch old episodes of The Walking Dead, you have entire scenes, entire episodes in some cases, where nobody in that episode is still alive anymore. So you kind of run into this problem that there is no memory of the things that you've seen because all those characters have been lost, and suddenly you have all these new characters introduced. And the fact that they're still alive now and your old characters are gone kind of leaves you in a position where it's like, well, why weren't we following these characters, the ones that are still alive? And so that kind of magic of, oh man, I can't believe they killed that guy is great until you run out of old guys to kill. Eventually you're either killing off new people that folks haven't gotten connected to, or you're killing off people that you didn't utilize the character well enough, or you're just losing the history of the show. Like there's nobody left that carries the language and history of the show anymore, and so you're kind of left stranded as a viewer. You stopped watching it halfway through season 3, felt like it started to go in circles then, and that may be part of it. I remember you didn't like the fact that they went into the prison. You'd mentioned that earlier, and I think you were among good company there. And then of course people found other things not to like about the show as it went along too. All valid criticisms, and of course there's still people that like it and are looking forward to the final seasons that are coming out now. All right, pulling up from Shallow Graves. Undead bodies with their eyes dusted over in sand sat up. In some cases, all right. Their burial was so shallow that Waldo had confused their pale, exposed skin as part of the ground. As they emerged, he saw he saw more of them than he could count. They were the ground. However long ago they had fallen or laid down here. The grasses and wind-carried dirt had covered them in wait for Waldo and this day. Alright, let's have more of these gross things pulling out of the ground here as we go. Alright, I tried to see some episodes in Season 4, but I felt like it was rubbish and not appealing to me in the slightest. There were changes in style as they switched showrunners. And so you have definite shifts in it as you go along. He'll fix it later. It's Nano Baby. Ground. Did I misspell something? That's all right. Oh, there you are. It's part of the ground. Yeah, no problem. You can pop those in anytime you want. I'll either fix them or I won't. Yeah, this is all first draft, of course. All right. Zombies pull from the dirt. Groundbreaking. Okay. Waldo did his best at first. Waldo did his best at first to weave between them. They shifted around as he bumped them. But they hadn't cleared their eyes of debris enough to see him yet. Of course they must know he was here. Of course they must have known he was here. Or why did they rise? He thought he had gotten away and could keep going. But the ground ahead went from breathing to ripping. The scene unfolding ahead of him, hill after hill, made him miss the streets a little more. The ground ahead was saturated. No, the ground ahead was moister. What a weird word. All right, the ground ahead was moister. You don't usually see it done in that form. Richer black soil. Richer black soil covered the shapes of bodies as they fought from the earth back into the air. Okay. What did you like? Did you like the movie Warm Bodies? It's been a long time since I saw it, but I did enjoy it. At the time, it was such a departure from like the Romero zombies, and you hadn't seen as much of that, at least not in the visual media. The fact was that there were many varieties of zombies in various books, especially if you were digging through Amazon and other places like that. But Warm Bodies kind of took things in a weird direction, and of course, it was at the time when people were mad about romantic vampires and romantic werewolves, so it got a lot of heat from people trying to figure out why they wanted to turn zombies romantic. But again, when you look at it as a standalone movie, apart from all that other hype that had come around it and negative hype, I thought it was pretty good, and I think it still stands up in terms of like being a unique movie. A lot of times with horror movies and zombie movies in particular, people repeat the things that are good over and over again to the point that they become cliches. So when you get back to those older movies that did something different, it looks cliche. You're like, I've seen this 100 times, but the fact was, that thing came first and people repeated it 100 times. But in the case of Warm Bodies, I think you got something that's unique that didn't get repeated a lot of times, to where it still stands up. So I know a lot of zombie fans that don't like it, but again, it being a while since I've seen it, I remember liking it very much. The ground ahead was moister. Rich black soil covered the shapes of bodies that they fought from the earth and into the air again. Muddy chunks fell out of their teeth as they opened their jaws and gave rattling growls to announce their returns. Okay. Let's say grassroots dug into their marbled skin. Grassroots dug into their marbled skin. Mushrooms, let's say colorless mushrooms sprouted from the joints of others as shelf funguses concealed parts of their faces. Worms and creatures with armored bodies, and many legs fell from the wet dirt they shed, or crawled out of holes rotted and burrowed into their flesh. Okay. The ground ahead continued to break farther and farther into the distance. Maybe his traipsing through the field had awakened... No, awakened's not the right word because they weren't really sleeping. Had stirred the first few. But now they were activating each other in a chain reaction that cut off Waldo's path. Nope, I don't want to do a return. Waldo's path and all his plans. He turned in a circle to see that he was... No, let's not say see, to discover. To discover he was surrounded by the resurrecting dead. The ones who had flopped out of the fence simply joined this new horde of green zombies, bringing the vegetation along with them. He needed to go. That much, I'll say, that much hadn't changed. Okay, I'm not there yet. That much hadn't changed. Alright, we are about to a stopping point, so let me cross the... that much hadn't changed. Let me cross the line here. I think I need like 8 more words, but might as well hit the point where we need to get. All right. He cut toward the buildings on the left, to the left. it to the left. I don't know why I put an it there. It was still some distance. And there were plenty of monsters rising out of the ground in this direction too. He needed to go somewhere though. Essay, and this was the direction that promised solid streets again the soonest. This city wasn't being good to him, but at least zombies didn't tear out of the asphalt. At least not yet. At least not that he had seen. But hell, this day wasn't over either, was it? Alright. I wonder if I should split there. Maybe I should. I don't have a great reason to, but it may do. Wonder how many words you wrote today. I did a little over 2,500, so I'm at 25,074 words, which was my goal. I may have done a little less than that because I went over a little yesterday, but I'm just over my 25,000 word goal, which is roughly halfway. This story may be a little longer than 50,000 words, but not a lot longer, because I want to stop it near that mark so it's a shorter read. But still make the goal there. So I forgot what I saw. Was I on chapter 12? Yeah, we'll cut this and make chapter 13 now. Alright, so let's do chapter 13, and we'll center that, and then we know where to start tomorrow. So I'm at the halfway point of my NaNoWriMo. I'm going to put a question mark next to my next chapter break because I may not break there. Yeah, I may break a little further down than what I intended for the next chapter, but that'll be alright. Alright, so we're going to take a look at... Well, first I got to update. So I'm at 25,075 words. 25,075 words. So we will update my total words... 25,075. Well, on track for a 20-day finish. I'm happy with that, and update my progress. And I got my 25,000 word badge there, so I'm halfway done. I'm not going to get the 21 consecutive days, because if I finish on 20 days, I'll be done. I'm not going to get update progress every day, because once I'm finished, I'm not going to update anymore. And I'm not going to achieve par every day because I'm going to stop at day 20 and not get through there. But I will eventually get my 40,000, and I will eventually get my 50,000. So that works. I'm probably not going to get update more than once in a day either. So we got all that. All right, but let's take a look at some of my buddies. So let's jump back to my pretty face so I'm not showing you anybody who doesn't want to be seen. All right. I don't think everybody is updated, but we'll take looks anyway. All right, so John Quick is at 24,579. I'm not sure if that's an update for today, so he's likely to pass me as he does today's writing, so very good job, John. Jumping back, Ryan Pelton is in a very similar place. He has not updated yet because he writes at night. But Ryan Pelton is at 24,247. Again, I think that's yesterday's total. And we'll see how far he got today. So he's probably going to be well past the halfway point by the time he finishes tonight. And well on a 20-day pace. There's a lot of guys that are pretty close to a 20-day pace. You said I write 1,000 words per day, and you have an average book in a month's time. That's true. Steadily writing 1,000 words a day is more effective over time than writing a lot in big bursts and then having days off and that kind of thing. It just kind of depends on your style. But yeah, 1,000 words a day is a fine total, and especially if you consistently do it. All right, Tom Duffy, I believe, has updated today, but may not be done today. I'm not positive on that. I don't have everyone's memorized. He was at 22,358, and I think that may have been yesterday's total. So we're probably looking at an update today as well. So very good job, Tom. And Armand, I do not believe has updated today. Oh yeah, maybe he has. There was a jump when I clicked over, but I don't think he's done yet. So we have 21,549, but I believe he is writing now, and so he'll update again before the day is over, and wouldn't be surprised if he's real close to where I am, if not passing me. All right. So moving on down, we might hit a couple more people here. A lot of people look like they're in the same place. Alex from Iowa's covered another bunch of words, I think. Working on book 2 for the rest of the day today. So Armand, he's technically working on multiple books, but he's working on 2 books from the same series. And book 3 is the only one he counts towards Nano. So even though he's probably writing thousands of words to finish up that second book, he's not giving himself credit for them. So I'm giving you credit, Armand. Very good job, buddy. All right, Alex from Iowa. Good friend of ours, Curse of the Blood Moon. He's at 13,166 words, and I believe that's a jump from the last time I checked in on him, so very good job. Keep it going and keep it steady. Very good work. And going back to that 1,000 words a day thing that you mentioned, NaNoWriMo doesn't necessarily lend itself to that pace because 1,000 words a day is 30,000 words, which is considerable. But when you're doing that 50,000 word goal, you have to do more than that. And so people who have a good, steady 1,000 words a day are doing a great job. But Nano almost makes it feel like, well, it's not 50,000 words. And I've said more than once, people should set lower goals for NaNoWriMo so that they can be successful within their own range. Kedman says, I wrote 567 words so far today. Very good job, man. Of course, I don't know what time it is where you are. I think you're working late at this point because you're several hours ahead of me. But very good job. Those are 500 more words closer to what you're trying to complete. All right, so we checked on Alex. And I think a few people have made some progress, but I think most... Let's jump in on Bill Fisher. 11:13, late evening. There you go. But even at, if you decide to write after midnight, you can still count those as a good day's work. We watch the clock too much, I think. That's part of the reason why I sometimes will stream in the mornings, like especially this time, I'm doing Mondays and Tuesdays, a morning session for me, so that it's kind of a better part of the day for people in the European nations. And even when I go back to regular schedule, just 3 days a week, I still have one day where I do 10:15 my time, which is, closer to a respectable afternoon time for many people that are watching other places. We'll take a look at one more fellow here that we've updated on a couple times, Bill Fisher, and he actually contacted me to say that he appreciated the encouragement and that kind of thing, so that was nice of him. Tales from the Break Room is 7,788 words, and again, that is a jump from last time. I find Bill's writing interesting because he's kind of sharing sort of where he is mentally speaking and with life and everything else while he's getting ready to write. And he kind of talked about having a rough day and being tired, the last update that I saw, but he sat down and wrote anyway, and wrote a little over 1,000 words, I think it was. I'm going from memory here. But that idea of taking the time to sit down and do that. This page is NaNoWriMo, so it's nanowrimo.org, and it's sort of the official site where people put these goals on and work towards them. You can do them anytime you want. So you can use this site for any book you're writing at any level, but a lot of people use it in November when we're all kind of working on the goal. And then there's another group that does it in March, I think, where they do another National Novel Writing Month in March, and we'll work on it then. So if you're interested, you can drop in on it. Again, it's just NaNoWriMo.org. I'll just type that in real quick. So that's there in the chat. But good job to Bill. I appreciate all his hard work. I'm glad that he's encouraged, and we will see how things go.